Hi everyone, my name's Tim Johnston and this is my older yet faster journey. I'm a little bit tired today, a little bit spaced out because yesterday I ran my first ever marathon. Yay, go me. It's been a very long journey and one that I wouldn't have completed if it wasn't for Keith and Heidi's help. I had a long journey, a lot of ups and downs. Really started training for a marathon and wanted to do one in September 2019. So here we are 4 years later, and I'll talk about the roadblocks along the way, but I wouldn't have got here and wouldn't have been able to do that marathon if it wasn't for Keith and Heidi's help. I know, being a member of the Facebook group, that they appreciate these videos and sharing that people sharing their older yet faster journey. So this is, I guess, a small way that I feel like I can give back and share my journey and hopefully help some others out there that may be going through some similar issues. So today, the 4 key topics that I want to cover are: can you run a marathon in barefoot shoes? The book talks about getting back into running and obviously starting off small, running around an oval. And I guess I had this question throughout of, okay, well, yes, you can get back to doing 5K around an oval or 10K, but can you do 20, 25, 42 kilometers in barefoot shoes? Second key message, I guess, is around ITB syndrome. So this is something that plagued me and everyone you speak to when you say, oh, how's your running going? Oh, I've come across ITB. Everyone responds the same way, which is, oh, ITB is the worst. And it was really a struggle for me. Plantar fasciitis is something else that came up. And I went back to the Facebook group throughout and sought some help on that, and eventually got through that. And I guess just generally, tips and lessons from my experience that hopefully others will find helpful. So I'm going to divide it up into sections, and there's chapters below, so you can obviously watch the whole thing, or if there's topics that interest you in particular, feel free to skip ahead. So section 1 will be my journey. I'll go through my running, screen share my all my runs. I won't go through all my runs, but screen share my workouts, and we can talk about how things progressed. The second section, we'll be talking about ITB, plantar fasciitis, and strength work, the importance of doing strength work around running. Third section will be some thoughts on running surfaces. Fourth section, my older yet faster experience and running technique. And then the fifth section is that question around can you do a marathon in barefoot shoes. So again, a huge thank you to Keith and Heidi. You guys are so generous with your help throughout the Facebook group, and such an informative and helpful book. It's just been huge for me. And I remember at one stage where I could hardly run for 5 minutes, and I've got a daughter who's 5 now, and thinking, oh, am I ever going to be able to go for a run with my daughter, which is something I certainly would love to do, maybe a marathon one day in due course. So massive thank you to you guys. I couldn't be more appreciative. And for others watching, I hope this is helpful. Let's jump in. A little bit about me to start, and then we'll jump into my journey. So I'm 38 years old. I live in Melbourne, in Bowen, and I have been pretty active throughout my whole life. I love my sport. I played a lot of golf, cricket, tennis, soccer. I've done a little bit of running, but I never really consistently. I used to usually go for a run probably every, say, 2 weeks, just 5 to 10K, just because I thought it was good for me and to keep fit. But as I mentioned, I decided, and of course I've always had it as a bucket list thing to do a marathon. So in September 2019, I think I'd finished playing some soccer and thought, okay, it's time to train for a marathon. So this is my Strava profile, me looking like a bit of an idiot. If you have any questions or want to follow me on Strava, by all means. So let's go through my journey. In September 2019, I didn't have a Garmin, so I don't have any data before that. But you can see I started not really knowing what I was doing. Did a few runs, a few longer runs. So I guess the key point is that I've had a fair degree of fitness throughout my whole life. So I'm not starting right from scratch, say someone that hasn't been active or done any running whatsoever. I then got an online coach and ramped up pretty quickly. Which I don't think was the cause of all the issues. I think it was just repetition. And I'll scroll through these workouts quickly. But the one I want to stop at is in May 2020. So you can see I was pushing 55K this week, 52K doing some almost 2-hour runs. That was all going swimmingly. I then actually the first issue I had was patellofemoral joint pain. So in my knee, I remember going for a long run on a Sunday and walking downstairs the next day and thinking, oh gee, my knee's pretty sore. And I'm pretty disciplined and thought I should get on top of it. Went off to see a physio and he diagnosed the PFJ, said keep running. We don't want to rest this because a lot of running injuries, you don't want to rest all the time because you sort of got to readapt the body to running, and if you just rest and then come back to it, it'll just flare things up again. So the PFJ wasn't a huge issue, like it wasn't acute pain, but tried to get on top of that. So you could see some shorter runs. My K's dropped down to 33, and this run here was the killer. So June 14, I remember thinking with the PFJ that maybe I'm just being a bit soft and maybe I just need to run through it a little bit more. My brother's a runner as well, and he'd had some knee issues and thought, you have this sort of uncomfort, and if you start doing a number of Ks, it's sometimes you've just got to get through that discomfort. And so in this run here, I remember at about an hour and 15, I was coming back home up a big hill and my knee started to hurt. And I thought, look, I'm just going to run through this and get to the hour 25 that I had planned. And I remember thinking, yep, got to get through it. But I thought, gee, this knee, this feels really sore. Like this is really, really sore. But no, I got through the hour 25, which was obviously very silly in hindsight. And long story short, that was the start of the ITB syndrome. So that wasn't actually the PFJ in that case. That was the start of the ITB, such that I remember going for a walk the next day down to the shops, and I couldn't actually get down to the shops. It's probably only about 500 meters away from where we live. I remember going for a walk with my wife, and I had to turn back home because it was just really, really painful. So this is where the troubles started. Long story short, I saw 2 different physios. I saw a sports doctor. He gave me a cortisone jab in the knee. I gave it some rest. I saw a myotherapist, and no one could fix me. The first physio misdiagnosed the PFJ, the ITB, and I went back to him and said it's still PFJ, and he gave me all this strength and no release work, and that didn't work. It just made the muscles tighter, which tightened up the ITB even further. The second physio gave me no strength work and all release work, and that didn't work. The myotherapist was helpful, but he just rolled and rubbed the ITB. And there's a theory out there that, and I'll talk about this later, actually. I'll save this to the ITB section. But I eventually got onto an osteo. And the osteo that my brother had been seeing, he was quite helpful. He worked on my technique a little bit. So forwarding through to February 2021, you can see I started to do some small runs and sort of working on technique, running a little bit wider. And I'm just going to scroll through these gently. The osteo was good, gave me some strength work as well as release work. But as I scroll through, the problem that I had was I felt like there had to be an easier way. You'll see here, I mean, that was in, when did I start that? January 2021. I'm trying this. And one thing I should point out as well, there's a few Melbourne winters went by where I just threw in the towel. This is probably one here where I'm just getting sick of this. The running's not fixing itself. I've still got this injury. But then I did eventually pick things up again, maybe perhaps towards the end of the winters. But there was a couple of runs in here somewhere where I remember going for a run for like 45 minutes, and then the next day it was just sore, and I thought there has to be an easier way. Like there's something that I'm just missing here. It's just not working. There has to be an easier way to get through this and fix my problems. And then I came across Older Yet Faster. I was speaking with someone I met through work, a very keen runner, just done 100K, and he said he'd met Keith and had a session with him, I think back when Keith was doing in-person sessions, and he said he never looked back. He said one session with Keith and he'd never had an issue since. So I thought, well, you know what, let's look into this a little bit more. So in February 15, I started barefoot running. So genuine barefoot running, no shoes, around my local oval. As you can see here, I think this was about the first one, but this is in February 2022. And just doing lots of little runs. Maybe it was before that because I certainly didn't go maybe I did go into an hour and still try that out. Lots of small runs, and here you go. I've ditched the longer runs, so it probably hasn't worked. I probably had some soreness from those ones. Lots of small runs around the oval, And I remember thinking that this feels a little bit different. This is feeling pretty good. And I thought if I can get to run 1 hour around the oval without any issues the next day or during the run, then I'm really going to invest in this barefoot running and get a pair of barefoot shoes. So I kept doing this. Winter's coming in Melbourne, so getting a little bit colder, but still pretty consistent. Lots of small runs. And I definitely, Keith mentions in the book, take your time. If we're going from running with cushioned shoes and what we've been doing for the 36 years or so before that to running around an oval, you have to take your time, let your body adjust. We can't rush that. And a little bit, maybe perhaps overconfident, I guess, because I'm not coming from a zero base. I thought I could probably maybe have grounds to amplify that a little bit, say compared to someone who's not coming from any running background. But you can still see here through the workouts that I did take my time. And this was the key run. I eventually got to an hour, and I remember feeling really good after this one. I'd done an hour, 11 Ks, starting to get a little bit boring running around an oval for an hour. But I got through it, and I thought, okay, now's the time to get some shoes and really invest in this barefoot running. I think that is it for as much as I wanted to share. You can see here I still did some more runs, and I think I gradually transitioned. I still did a lot of the small runs around the oval, but I think maybe these ones, I might have. Oh no, that's an oval one as well. I think I started to work in some pavement running as well. So I got the barefoot shoes and started to do some runs around the local streets. But you can see here the Ks start to get pretty consistent. Nothing huge, 30 Ks, 23 runs. Either side, I did it every second day, trying not to do back-to-back if I could. And then we got through to October 2022 and thinking, okay, I can really do this consistently. And then eventually, if I keep going through, we've got December 2022 and January in the new year. That's when I started to do some longer runs. So let's focus on the ITB, the plantar fasciitis, and strength work. So what got me through my ITB issues? I remember watching a video on YouTube, and there was this lady in South Africa saying, I think she'd done a master's in ITB, and her conclusion was that fixing ITB, there's no one solution for everyone. Something that will work with one people won't work with another, but it might work with others. So I think the first thing is you've got to try a few different things. So this is just what worked for me. The first thing is clearly the older yet faster model, if I can call it that. The barefoot shoes. I uploaded a number of videos throughout my journey, and Keith was ever gracious with his feedback and explaining the concepts of overstriding, and I explicitly mentioned that I had issues with my ITB, and the overstriding leads to more pressure and the hips sort of the ITB doing too much work, and barefoot shoes, you get the stride underneath you, and then you're using your bigger muscles, like your glutes. So that was the first thing that certainly helped. The other thing that was very helpful was just isolating. I mentioned in the previous section about one physio said all strength work, another physio sort of gave me all release work. But I guess throughout the other sports I've played, I've always been a believer, and now I'm an even bigger believer in you need to do a combination of both. So if you're getting these injuries, it's probably because some areas are weak and they need strengthening, and some areas are tight and they need loosening. The myotherapist that I work with and continue to work with, he was quite helpful and said, look, there's two key muscles that connect into the ITB, and that's your glutes and your TFL. And I remember spending, I think it was 8 sessions with him, and it was about $1,000. It was a lot, where he just kept rolling and rubbing my ITB. And I also remember reading something saying that physio students or a group of people operating on cadavers and looking at the ITB and these bands being as strong as steel, like they're incredibly strong. So if you're massaging steel, is it going to change? No, it's not. And eventually, I obviously didn't know this at the time, but eventually the myo, he did some dry needling in my TFL. And the next day I was walking around and I felt like my knee had just been unlocked. So that little tiny muscle, you can look it up. I've concentrated a lot on with the spiky ball ever since, just trying to release that TFL, releasing the glutes, which will then release the ITB itself. The other thing which helped for me a lot was uneven surfaces, or specifically not running on uneven surfaces. So I'll comment more on this on the running surfaces section, but if the ITB issues can come about because your glutes aren't strong enough, so your hips are a bit unstable, and the ITB is picking up the slack. If you're running on uneven surfaces and you're landing on rocks and running on trails and all that sort of thing, that can also exacerbate or lead to that instability, as opposed to pavement where it's just a nice, or grass for that matter, or it's just a nice flat surface. So running on, I thought I was doing myself a favor by going on easy on the feet, not running on pavement all the time, running on trails, and I thought that was the right thing to do. But I eventually worked out that flat surfaces is much better for the ITB. And strength. So strength, huge. This was what I got from the osteo that I mentioned. He was quite helpful. He gave me 4 exercises, which I'll show you now. Very simple exercises, but just strengthening around the key areas. And I used weights and did that religiously, twice a week, usually after an easy run. So I'd usually say do an easy run Tuesday mornings, come home and straight away do 10-15 minutes of the weights, and Friday mornings as well. So the first one, excuse my daughter's bed in the background. The first one was a Hungarian split squat, where basically weight over here and over the back, leg out, and just bending down and getting into the glutes. Hopefully you can see that. The second one was quads. So I got, people might know the game Finska. So I took the Finska dolls, or whatever you call them, the pins out, put some weights in, and you won't be able to see my legs here, but you get the general idea of basically just extending that, I'll turn the camera down actually, extending that quad out, and strengthening the quad. The way the osteo initially explained that was like those old school machines you see in the gym where people are doing their quads, which no one really does anymore. The third one was calves. Calves, so important. So I stacked a backpack full of weights and did calves, just some raises. Each of these was about 3 sets of 10 or 8 reps. And the first and the fourth one was a hamstring curl. So just leaning against something and bending over kind of like that. You can't see my leg out, but and really just trying to lengthen their hamstring. Probably not the best demonstration, but if people have questions, you can ask me. So I did those a lot, and I remember the osteo also saying that he was a believer, and I think this makes sense, that when you're running, you're doing lots of light impact, lots of many reps of low impact, because just basically just body weight. So if we're doing strength work, we want to do the opposite. Try and do heavy weights if you can. I realize this advice may not be appreciated by everyone, because you've obviously got to work up to this. You can't just do it straight away, but you want to do heavier weights of lower reps to get the body adapting and working in different ways, because you're already getting the many reps of light impact. So that was the ITB. That was basically what I wanted to cover there. The other one was plantar fasciitis. So when I changed to the barefoot shoes, you're obviously using your feet a bit more. I think that's what Keith says in the book, and Heidi says in the book. You're using your feet, which is great. But I did get some plantar fasciitis in both feet, most notably in Queensland. I was between jobs, and luckily enough, took some time off. Took the family up to Queensland for 4 weeks in July. And in doing that, I stopped doing my strength work because I didn't have my weights, but I also started wearing no shoes quite a lot. I was doing more running because it was in Queensland. It was beautiful and warm. And by the end of that, I remember coming back. I actually drove up and drove back through Wangaratta and stopping on the way and going for a run. And I remember this one run, I got to about 10 Ks and I was in that much pain I couldn't run anymore. I had to stop and walk it out. I went back to the Facebook group, searched plantar fasciitis, got a heap of information there, very helpful about what should we do if this flares up. And the key points there are Heidi's exercises. I was certainly doing them while we were away, but to get on top of it, I did them even more. and also was soaking my feet in the bath. So I've got two girls. They have a bath every night. Really simple. They probably bathe for about 20 minutes. My feet in the water for 15 minutes, and then rolling for 5 minutes afterwards. So that worked out quite well. Suited my wife as well, because she doesn't have to do bath time. And then the other thing, which I think is really important for plantar fasciitis, is the calf strength. And I think Heidi would certainly agree with that. But because I hadn't been doing my weights, in particular those calf exercises, while I was away, getting back and just doing heaps of calf exercises, just such an important muscle group for running. So strength work, I think it's just super important, particularly if you're going to do those longer distances. And even yesterday, I felt pretty good. I won't go into all the detail, but I felt pretty good even through 37, 39 Ks. I was definitely getting sore and fatigued, but I wasn't cramping up, and my body wasn't giving way on me. And I definitely think that strength work was a big part of that. Setbacks. I had a couple of setbacks, particularly in Queensland throughout the journey, but I noticed that this time around with the older yet faster model, they weren't as bad. Like, I never had that residual pain, which was there for a couple of days after a run. It was always, okay, well, that's not right. And there was one run in Queensland in particular where my ITB, I had to stop. I think I had 27 Ks planned. I did 23, and I'm like, no, I'm stopping this. But the next day it wasn't too bad, and then it gradually got better. Whereas I feel like in the older model, it kind of got worse. So you'd come home and you'd go, oh, okay, that's a bit sore. And then the next day it was actually really quite painful. So that gave me a lot of confidence, because for a long time, as you can imagine, I was lacking confidence, where I was really concerned that I'd have a setback and go back to square one and not be able to run for 5 minutes. Okay, section 3, let's talk about running surfaces. Obviously, Keith in the book, big on running around grass. And I did a lot of that. I showed that in my journey that I went through, where I showed some of the runs and the workouts I did. I certainly started on grass. I think it was probably about 3 months or so. I think the things I've learned in terms of running surfaces, if you want to do a marathon, you've got to get on the pavement. Obviously, choose your time, pick it, make sure you're ready, take your time, and start when you think it makes sense. But you've got to get on the pavement, and I think that's something I wish I had have done earlier. Most marathons that we're doing, we're not running 42 Ks on grass. They're going to be Melbourne Marathon around pavement, Sydney Marathon around pavement. I did Run for the Young out in Lilydale in the east of Melbourne, and that was on trail. We do need to build up and get off the grass eventually. I still kept running around grass, so my Tuesday recovery run, very slow. I'd always do that down the local oval. Eventually with my barefoot shoes on. Initially it was with no shoes, and I liked that because it's just a recovery run, really slow around the softer grass surface. But my faster Wednesday runs and certainly my long Sunday runs eventually were all on pavement, and I adapted. I was a little bit lacking confidence, I think, but I did adapt and got there and built that confidence. The other one that I mentioned in the previous section, but just for those that skipped over that section, is running on trails. I think running on trails is good, but the lesson for me with the ITB is I wouldn't be doing that. I was doing every run on a trail at one stage. I would do a trail every now and then, and trail running is certainly fun. But with the barefoot shoes, which I'll show you in the next couple of sections, you certainly feel the gravel, you feel the stones when you hit on sore points. Even in the marathon yesterday, the bit that hurt the most was crunching some stones at that 37K mark, and I remember sort of a little bit with a bit of trepidation every time my right foot in particular came down. So trails are great, but don't overdo it. And I thought I was doing the right thing by running every long run on a trail. I think the pavement is where you've got to get to. So section 4, let's talk about my older yet faster experience. So I read the book, signed up to the Facebook group, would regularly check in with the Facebook group and have a look at what people are talking about. But I uploaded my videos. It was 2 separate occasions where I uploaded my videos and got some feedback from Keith. I don't think we need to go into all the specifics, but it was the usual things, kind of overstriding, leaning forward a little bit too much. I would generally start pretty much every run with the jumping up and down 3 times on the spot, and then just trying to gently push forward and keep up the right technique. But one thing that I noticed, which was a huge difference straight away, and I know Keith says not to try to do this, but I think this probably explains it's probably a sign of a good thing, was my cadence. So my cadence in my older runs, even preparing for this video, going through my older runs, checking out a few workouts, my cadence was always 166, 168, 170. I remember going for one run and thinking, 180 is the magic number. And I was down in Point Lonsdale and trying to, okay, well, what do I need to do to get to 180 steps per minute? And I remember just my feet just banging up and down, like kind of like a road runner kind of thing. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And that was before I started Older Yet Faster. But as soon as I changed to that and really trying to run with the glutes a little bit more, that made a big difference. And my cadence shot up to 180 without trying. One thing that I did which helped give me that feeling was walking like Frankenstein. So here we go again. Apologies if the demonstration isn't much good, but walking like Frankenstein, just trying to keep your glutes really switched on and just kind of walking forward with completely straight legs. I felt like doing that, you had to use your glutes. Your glutes are switched on and really activated. And so I kind of had that feeling a little bit throughout my running as well. Obviously you have to bend your knees a little bit, but that was one, I guess, running thought which helped a bit. So last section 5, I want to answer this question that I had for quite a while was, can you run a marathon with barefoot shoes and using the Older Yet Faster methodology? And the reason why I bring this up was because Keith in the book talks about 5K, 10K, 15K and building up slowly. And I wasn't sure if that meant that it could apply to 42 kilometers. Obviously, there's a big difference. When you go to any event, you see that just about everyone are in these big, bulky shoes. And I guess I had this thing in the back of my mind of, will I need the support of the big, bulky shoes to get me through such a long run and a long distance? And every time I thought that, I thought, but hang on, Keith's gone through this in the book. We don't need the support. We just need strong legs. We don't need the support. They're just, kind of a cheat, a shortcut. Strong legs is the answer. Good technique is the answer. But then I still had these thoughts of, well, everyone else is using these big, bulky shoes, and and maybe that's kind of what I need. And maybe I had these thoughts, especially after, say, I've had a minor setback, and okay, well, maybe I need the extra support because that's what the modern runner does. So it was a question that I had. I even posted in the Facebook group. I said, "Oh, look, have people been through this before?" Unfortunately, the response I got was recommendations for different shoes, which was not what I was looking for. But it won't be any surprise to you to learn that yes, you can do a marathon in barefoot shoes, and that's exactly what I did yesterday. So here are my Vivos. That's my left shoe, obviously. Very, very minimalist. When I do things, I tend not to do them by halves. So after I'd read the book and in, Feb 2022, decided to buy a pair of barefoot shoes, I said I want as minimal as possible because that's what Keith says in the book and Heidi says in the book. And they said there's different Vivos, there's sort of different levels of comfort. And I just want, as close to running barefoot as possible. I'm not necessarily recommending Vivos. I'm not a barefoot shoe expert. They also developed this hole after about 6 months. Well, it wasn't even 6 months actually. It was about 4 months, which was kind of annoying. And I went back to the shoe company and said, I took a little while getting back to them. I said, look, I've got this hole. Can we do anything? And they said, if you had told us within the 6 months, it would have been covered under warranty. And I said, well, the issue was there. But anyway, I didn't push it. I should have got onto it earlier. And you can see my wife actually stitched it up to hold it together. But that was over a year ago, and they've held well together. So certainly not recommending Vivos. I'm not an expert. But the answer there is that yes, you can do a marathon in barefoot shoes. That's exactly what I did, and hopefully my stronger legs is what got me through. So to summarize, there's a bit to go through there, but Older Yet Faster, what a fantastic resource. I'm ever so grateful and would recommend it to anyone that would listen. I'm actually looking forward to getting back to a bit of genuine barefoot running, not using the shoes. The last sort of 5 months I've always worn my Vivos, my barefoot shoes, just because I knew that's what I'd be doing in the marathon. But I'm looking forward to looking a little bit silly as you feel sometimes, going down to the local oval and just doing genuine barefoot running with no shoes whatsoever. And you're getting that funny feeling. It's kind of nice, but it's kind of a little bit odd where you run on the grass for a little bit while, and your feet you're tingling a little bit. Just to recap the key points: ITB syndrome, older yet faster, and better technique, better shoes has helped me, and certainly I don't think I would have got through it without the advice and help that I've got. Plantar fasciitis, that might be an issue that might come up for you. It is conquerable. Keep on with Heidi's feet exercises every day, every night. Oh, look, let's be honest, I probably did them about 5 nights a week. There's probably a couple that I didn't, but still do them regularly. They're there for a reason. Do the strength work. That definitely worked for me. May or may not work for you, but a bit of weights I think really helps, particularly if you're looking to those longer distances. Running surfaces, don't be afraid of the pavement. We've got to get there eventually, and I think it's kind of a necessary evil in some ways, particularly if you do want a marathon where there is going to be some pavement involved. And lastly, just reiterating my thanks. Keith, Heidi, if you've made it this far, thank you very much for the resource that you've created. I think you guys should be incredibly proud of it. And I wouldn't have been able to tick that bucket list item of completing a marathon without your help. So I am very, very grateful. And to everyone else out there, I wish you best in your running journey. It's a funny sport, running. You feel like you're a bit in your own head sometimes, and you go for a run for 2.5 hours and you're just sort of thinking, but look, there's definitely an addictive element. It's good fun. You meet some lovely people along the way. Even in the marathon yesterday, I was running with the group most of the way, and we had this random guy sort of come up and pace us. He knew one of the others in the group, which we'd never met each other before. We were all chatting, and I wasn't chatting. I was focusing on left foot, right foot. But it's just a lovely way to meet some nice people. And towards the end, I finished last in that group, but I went up and had a chat to some new people, and you make friends pretty quickly. So my running journey, I'm looking forward to the next chapter. May or may not do another marathon. We'll see. But I wish you the best with your running journey.